Hello again, people. We're out here again. We're doing another little job on my KLR. Today, we're going to be doing the Doohickey upgrade. Now, that sounds like a funny name, but it is actually official. It is a little part right in here that adjusts the chain tension on, I'm not exactly sure what the part is called. It's a balancer of some sort. I may look that up later just to have the official name in the video, but it's a part that commonly fails on these KLRs. And it looks like this. Looks like that right there. It's a doohickey. And apparently the spring that holds it in tension commonly breaks, and those little spring bits can get jostled around the engine and cause a lot of damage. And apparently they can fail and you don't even really know it. So when I open up my engine, I'll see if it has already failed. I've got about 14,000 miles on this bike. People say that you can go 15 to 30,000 miles without changing them. I think most people change them around 15,000. I really don't have my information with me for this job. I'm gonna look all this up and put it in my next shot, but yeah, I'm a little intimidated by this job. You gotta take a good bit apart from the engine. You gotta dig around in the actual engine itself a decent amount. I've not done that before. I've only worked on scooter engines, 50cc engines. And this one is much more official, much bigger. And there's a lot more that can go wrong if you mess up a little bit. So I'm a little intimidated by this job. I'm out here at about 11 a.m. and I have no idea if this job is going to take me 3 hours or 6. I have no idea. It's a big job. Yeah, I just want to say before I get started, I'm not a mechanic. Do not take my advice. This is purely an entertainment video. Sort of following my first real difficult job on this bike. Yeah, it's gonna be a little challenge. Let me look up some of the information and then walk you through my tools. Okay, so I just did some looking, and the thing that the doohickey tensions is officially it's called the left front balancer sprocket, and it's a little weight up there. The doohickey's back there, and the chain goes around like that, and the balancer has a little sprocket on it, and I'm sure it's just used to lessen vibration or something like that. I'm not totally sure. Again, I'm not a mechanic, but let me walk you through the tools that will be required to do this job. Starting out, I've got the Climber KLR manual. I may not be using that too much because I've got a reference video that I will link in the description. But let's start out at the doohickey stuff. So here I've got the Eagle Manufacturing doohickey and the washer that comes with it. I've got the torsion spring and a small drill bit that comes with it, both from Eagle Manufacturing. I've also got this Rotor puller tool, also from Eagle Manufacturing. This is a rotor bolt, which you need to change if you are going to be doing this job. I'll be taking the original rotor bolt out of there, putting this new one in. I've kept it in the bag because Eagle Mike put some grease on the threads, which you're supposed to do, so I'm just gonna keep those from getting dirty. Stuff's dropping over here. I've also got a little punch, center punch. That's going to be used to punch a little divot in right around there on, man, I'm blanking on so many of the names of this stuff, it's crazy, but I'm going to take this cover off, and then there will be another sort of cover that goes around, and there will be a little plate on there that you need to punch a mark in. So I've got a punch for that. I've got a hammer for it as well. I've got a little magnet in case I drop anything into the engine while I'm working on this. I've got a Sharpie because I will be taking the gear shifter off, and I'm just going to mark on the spline where the gear shift lever is mounted. I've got some gasket cleaner tools, gasket scrapers. I've got some new gaskets, also from Eagle Mike. I've got a rotor holder tool, also from Eagle Mike, that will help me take the rotor off. I've got a couple pry bars here, which I will be inserting in that little hole right there, which will hold the rotor holder tool as I'm cranking on it with my breaker bar to get the rotor off. What else do I got? I've got some gasket maker here, ultra black. I'm not totally sure if that's the right kind of gasket maker that I'll need, but I figure they're all generally the same, at least for the tiny amount that I'll be using here, and I'll only be using a little bit. I've got a drill to use with this drill bit. I've got some axle grease, which we're going to be putting on the outside of the starter motor, just a tiny little bit to help get the cover back on easily. I've got a few shop rags. At some point when we are going to be using these gasket scrapers, I'm gonna be putting the shop rags in the engine to stop any gasket pieces from getting inside. What else do I got? I've got some zip ties over here. When I take this front cover off, it's got a magnet inside of it, and I'm just going to be switching the cover around and then zip tying it here just so that it's held on the bike and can be easily worked on. I've got some new oil right there. It doesn't look new, but that's just the bottle that I keep in my bike in case I need to fill up while I'm on the road. Got some new oil so that I can oil up our parts when we're putting everything back on with new oil. I should mention that we will be draining the oil from the bike before we do anything else. So I've got an oil pan right there, just a little box. I made sure to clean it out because I will be reusing the same oil. This oil only has about 400 miles on it, and I didn't want to go through and do a whole oil change because it's so new. So I've got an oil pan, and then I've also got a towel so that no dirt or leaves get into the old oil while I'm doing this job. I've got some brake cleaner, contact cleaner, that will be used when we're drilling our hole in the cover. That will just end at various other points just to make sure that everything's clean. Got some safety glasses. I've got a funnel so that when we're done with the whole job I can easily pour the oil back in. I've got an inch-pound torque wrench that will be torquing down all the bolts on this cover. I've got a 20 to 100 foot-pound torque wrench. When we're putting this rotor bolt back on, you will torque it down 3 different times. First, you'll torque it down just a little bit to make sure that there is no oil on it, I think. So you'll torque it down, and then you'll take it back out to make sure there's no oil. Then you'll torque it down even more to make sure that the starter motor gear turns freely behind the rotor. And then you'll be torquing it down to 144 foot-pounds for the final torque, if everything looks good. What else do we got? We've got some pliers. This will help me put on the torsion spring. I've got a parts pan just in case I need it. I've got some gloves, got some shop rags, WD-40, simple green. I don't know how much I'll be needing those. And then of course I've got all my sockets, a ratchet, some screwdrivers and all that. I don't know how much of that stuff I'll need. And I am sitting on my jack, which I will be jacking my motorcycle up with after I drain the oil. So it's an involved job. There's a lot of steps and a lot of things needed for this. It's going to be intimidating, but whatever, we got to start. So first I'm going to be taking this skid plate off. It's got 3 10mm bolts, and then I'll be draining the oil, replacing this towel over the drained oil, and then oh, also I've got, not there, but here I've got some Eagle Mike crush washers. So after I drain the oil, I'll be replacing the oil plug with a new crush washer. You do want to make sure to use a new crush washer every time you do an oil change or replace the bolt. And I think that should be it. So yeah, I'll be taking the skid plate off, draining the oil, replacing the bolt with a new crush washer, and then I'll be jacking it up. And then we'll go from there. I imagine this video is going to be pretty long. This little tools demonstration is 10 minutes long already, so let's get started. Okay, I got my oil drained, got it covered. It's going to be sitting there until the very end of the job. And I got my motorcycle jacked up. Next we're going to be taking the cover off, and then we will be taking the engine cover off. And we'll be doing that in a star pattern. So loosen that, and just loosen all those bolts. Make sure that it does not warp at all. And then I will be taking one of these zip ties and putting a zip tie around this brace in the frame and looping the zip tie through one of these bolt holes and resting the engine cover on my foot peg. And I'll show you what that looks like after I've done it. Okay, so it's been a little bit of time since my last video. I did a lot of cleaning down here and down in here. A lot of cleaning. There was a lot of dirt, grease, gunk from my last chain, and I just decided to go in and wipe everything down. This was all caked. My whole swing arm linkage. This was all caked. Everything was caked. And so I went and cleaned all that out. But next thing I'm doing here is taking my Sharpie and making a little mark on that spline where this opening is, so that I put the gear shift lever back in the same place when I'm done. I'm gonna take this little bolt out, I think it's 10 mil, and then I will work on removing all the wires from, all the stator wires from their little slots here. I'll give all that a wipe down, and then I will loosen this stator cover in a star pattern. Okay, I also just wanted to add that you will be disconnecting this clutch or neutral sensor like that. So that's that one. I've got all these wires out of here, and next we'll be taking this stator cover off. And just one more thing, I have prepared my zip tie to hold the stator cover once I get it off. Again, I'll be removing these. The guy in the reference video that I'm using from Rocky Mountain ATV did not remove them in a star pattern, although he did tighten them in a star pattern later in the video, so I think I may just go in a star pattern just to be safe. I'll pull this off. It is magnetized, so just be careful pulling it off. And then I will be looping this zip tie through that bolt hole right there after I've taken it off. And then I'll be resting it on the foot peg. Onward. Okay, so I've removed the stator cover. A couple notes I wanted to make were, you want to make sure that there are two dowels connected to the cover when you take it off. My cover came off with a good bit of gasket material still on, so that's kind of unfortunate. I'll have a lot to clean off when I get to that point. I just put a towel over it because I am outside, and so I don't want anything blowing onto the stator while I'm doing all this, and I'll have a little bit to clean off the rotor and everything. But the guy in the Rocky Mountain video did mention to watch out for some washers on these two gears here. They may stick to the holes that they come out of. Mine did not, mine are there. And I also did want to mention that I bought this KLR secondhand, and it's possible that this doohickey has already been changed. I don't exactly know. If it has, then my job will be much shorter. So I'm sort of hoping that it has, but it'd also be fine if it hasn't. It'd be nice to have this experience, but yeah, I'm not sure what to do next. I'm gonna go to the reference video. I think I'll be removing these two gears here. I'll put them under a towel. I also have a towel here just to catch any oil that was dripping out. Yeah, I'll be putting these under a towel, making sure they stay clean as I'm doing everything. And then I think the next thing will be to take off this rotor bolt, and then to use the rotor puller, take the rotor off. And then I think I may be able to see if the doohickey is actually aftermarket or stock. Okay. Next. Okay, so here's the setup that I've got to take this rotor bolt off. Right here I've got a pry bar that I have stuck through those frame holes right there in order to rest this rotor holder on to push against. The rotor holder simply went on the rotor there. There were two indentations. I'll show you. Yeah, two indentations. It just pushes on there. The rotor bolt is a 19 millimeter, and I've just got a breaker bar. And let's break it loose. And this is torqued to 144 foot-pounds, or it's supposed to be at least. So It's gonna take a little bit to get. There we go. Okay. Now I'm gonna loosen that all the way, and then I will be coming back to show you how to take the rotor off. Okay, so I got the rotor bolt out. This is just getting thrown away, this old one. You do not want to reuse these. I'm guessing because they are torqued down so much, you don't want to reuse them. This is our rotor puller tool that I got on Eagle Mike with the whole Doohickey replacement kit. I will be putting a little bit of new oil on the threads, screwing it into there, and then taking whatever this is, maybe it's 19mm as well, and removing the rotor. I think that's how you do it. I think you screw it in there with some new oil and then just start ratcheting it out. I'll let you know if there's anything different that goes on. Okay, I'm in the middle of taking my rotor off right now, and I just got a little worried when I was using this puller tool. I haven't taken it off completely, but I had this threaded in. I had the rotor holder up here, or actually I think it was down here against this pry bar as well, and I was using the breaker bar with the 19mm. That's a 19mm right there. I was using it to go down to the right to tighten, because that is the correct direction to get the rotor off. And the rotor wasn't moving, but the breaker bar was, so I was getting really worried that I was stripping the threads here in this rotor. And I'm not exactly sure how strong of a material this is, but I was looking at a few more videos to make sure I was doing everything right, and it appears that that is how it's supposed to come off. So if the rotor doesn't move, this tool pushes right here against this darker material, and I guess it pushes it, and the rotor comes off with the threads. So I think I was doing it okay. I'm gonna re-oil it, put it in there one more time, and then take the breaker bar to it, and I hope that I am correct there, that that this is not supposed to turn as it comes off, because otherwise I will be buying a new rotor. All right, let's give it a shot. Okay, we're in the clear. I was doing it right. So I got my rotor off and covered up right there, and I got my rotor puller off, and everything's okay. Except I'm now able to see my old Doohickey, and I'm very glad I decided to do this, because yes, the old Doohickey is still on there, and it has snapped. Look at that. This thing is supposed to be connected right down there, and there's not supposed to be this huge hole here. So my Doohickey has broken. I don't think, thankfully this hasn't shattered, so I think it just snapped right there and that was it. I don't think there is anything in the engine, but once I get this starter gear taken off, I will do a much closer inspection. I also don't, the spring's right there. I don't know if that's the right place for it. But next step is to take out this woodruff key right here, and then to take the starter motor off. And do not misplace this. I will also be referencing the video that I've been watching this whole time, and we'll make sure that these steps are correct. So I wanted to say that there is a washer here, and I'll put this right there next to my rotor. Here's my woodruff key. Okay, and it just slides out. Put that right over there too. Okay, next. Okay, so there's the snapped doohickey. I was looking around in here and I didn't see any pieces at first. I'll be doing a closer inspection later after I get this second cover off. A few notes for the next steps. We will be taking the second cover off. It is connected with this bolt right here and then some bolts around the outside. I'll be taking this bolt off first and then I'll be doing a star pattern like I did with the stator cover. And before I do any of that, I'm going to be taking this bolt out right here, holding the doohickey on, and make sure that you get this washer out right here. The guy in the Rocky Mountain ATV video said that it may fall into the engine. That is why I've got this extendable magnet right here. If that falls in, I'll be using that to get it out. All right. This is a very involved job. I seem to be missing some things. I also wanted to say that when I took the starter gear off at the end of this shaft right here, which I think is the crankshaft, there were two washers. These two right here, that's two. I've just placed them on top of the starter gear in the correct order, and I will know to put them back on this way when I am reassembling everything. Yep, so there is my old broken doohickey. And I lined this up when I had both my hands. Right now I'm recording video, so I can't really show this well, but they did line up perfectly. And so I'm pretty sure that there's no shards or anything in here to worry about. Okay, next I'll be taking this cover off, starting with this bolt. Okay, I've gotten this cover off, and it's pretty dirty, so I'm gonna give it a good clean along with scraping the gasket. There's the gasket here. The gasket is still on here. Just gotta pry that off sometime. I did want to note that it was pretty difficult to get the cover off of this starter motor little circle. When I put this back on, I will be greasing it with a little bit of axle grease. And this little thing, this piece here, this can come out with the cover. I did have to periodically push this back in as I was taking the cover further and further off. Also, I'm going to put these dowels here back into their respective holes. Make sure that you do not misplace those. Get this one off. I'll clean my gloves and get a pair of pliers and take that one off, and it will be going in that hole right there. Make sure you don't misplace those. Next, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'll be taking this spring off, but I'm gonna look at the video and get back to you. Also, this whole doohickey thing is meant to tension this chain, which turns this balancer. So that's the whole point of this thing. All right, next on the list, let's keep going. Okay, I was right. Next, you take that spring out. I already threw mine in the garbage. And next up will be to scrape all of the gasket material off of all of our gasket surfaces, both sides of this cover here. And I will be putting this rag into my engine case, similar to this one, so that when I do start scraping gasket off, no pieces fall inside. Yeah, and then that will be the end of our disassembly, and we can start getting on to putting the new doohickey in. It is 2 p.m. I've been out here for 3 hours now, and I'm getting a bit hungry, so I'm gonna order some lunch, have a little lunch break, and then come back to it. Okay, it is about an hour later. I've had my lunch, and I've scraped all the gasket material from both this and that surface clean. As you can see, you really do want the rag put in there. A lot of gasket material can fall. I've also scraped the gasket material out of both sides of this, and I have replaced, I have not replaced, I'm replacing the dowels in these dowel slots. I'll press those in further later. That one went in well. This one's a little sticky. And I'll deal with that later. Next up, we are installing our torsion spring. Now there are a few variations of this job. This is a torsion spring right here. You can also use regular springs like the one that I threw out earlier. I think Eagle Mike sells a few variations. The video that I am watching, the Rocky Mountain ATV video, they use the torsion spring, so I'm going to use the torsion spring. Now, in order to install this, you have to use this drill bit that comes with the Eagle manufacturing kit, and drill a hole where this little tab can go into this plate here. And so in that ATV, Rocky Mountain ATV video, they say that you want it between 5 and 530. You want this tab, this drill hole between 5 and 530 when centered on here. So I'm assuming that's right around there. And I don't know how exact you need to be with that. I think 5:30 would be there, maybe 5 o'clock would be there. So I'm gonna put mine right about there, and I'm going to use this punch here, this center punch, to mark the plate, and I'll use a hammer to mark it, and then I will be taking that drill bit, putting it in this drill, and drilling down into our plate. Okay, let's see what results. Okay, so I've drilled my hole. My torsion spring fits in nicely, nice and snug. Now I'm going to take this out. It's kind of snug in there. I'm going to be using some contact brake cleaner and getting all these little metal shavings out of here. Okay, so we've got our torsion spring properly installed. Oh geez, it's getting a little windy. The next step is to put this gasket on, and I'm just hooking it on the dowels. Damn. Put the gasket on, and then we put our little casing here on. There we go. Put the casing on, and then torque all of those bolts down to 78 inch-pounds. I'll be back. Oh, also, the guy in the Rocky Mountain video mentioned that if your spring had broken, you should check the timing. I briefly looked in my manual because my spring actually did not break. It was the doohickey itself. I don't know if that is important, but I think the manual said to line up these two dots right here on the balancer. I didn't look very deeply into it. I've been out here a while and I want to get back inside, but I think that's what you want to look out for. Or maybe all three of those little dots should line up, which they do. Okay, I'm gonna get that gasket on, get the side cover on, torque everything down, and come back. Okay, so we got our side cover on, we got the gasket on underneath it, and we got all these bolts torqued down to 78 inch-pounds. And I did that in a star pattern, again, not to warp the cover. I think the next step will be to install our doohickey. That was correct. The next step was to put on the doohickey. So how I did that was I first put the doohickey on. It's okay if there's a little space right there. And I put it on so that the thick part was behind. Then I held the doohickey forward as much as I could in order to tension the chain, and screwed this bolt back on. Make sure that you get the washer behind that little piece that comes with the doohickey. And what this is all for is so that we can tighten down the torsion spring. Now, the setup that my bike had before was that the tensioning spring was hooked around this little piece, and which was also hooked around a little piece connected to this sprocket right here, and that's what was really tensioning the spring, or the tensioning the chain. It's getting, I've been out here a long time, I can't really think, but so that's what was tensioning the chain. This torsion spring, the new tensioning system, is connected to this little plate right here, and then it will be hooked right here onto the doohickey. So now, whereas I think before the doohickey wasn't really serving much of a purpose, maybe other than to hold this shaft still, this spring will now be holding the doohickey forward as much as it can, which will be putting as much tension onto this chain as it needs to. So I will use a pair of pliers here, and I will grab this. Let me make sure to watch what I'm doing. And I will just twist this around. Let's see. Just get a good hand on my phone here. I'll just twist this around. All right, I'm gonna do this without recording, but I'm gonna twist that around and put it on the end of the doohickey right there. Okay, so I got the spring down on the doohickey. Next, we'll be loosening this bolt a little bit just so that the doohickey can be pulled by the torsion spring as much as it needs to. And then after we get everything back on, this will be getting torqued down to a specific torque. I don't know what that torque is yet. I will let you know when we get there. Okay, the next parts of this are very involved. So I already reinstalled these two washers. I made sure to oil the inside of them beforehand. Next, I'm going to be putting on this starter gear. And I'll be oiling the inside of this as well. Got the starter gear on, and I also got this washer here on. See that? I oiled this. Next, I will be reinstalling the woodruff key, I think, and then the rotor. Now there are some complicated bits that the guy in the Rocky Mountain ATV video was pointing out about oiling the one-way clutch here and making sure that this taper right inside here is as clean as possible, along with the taper on the crankshaft here. That needs to be as clean as possible. So I would, if you're watching this, I would refer to that for any advice. I'm gonna be using brake cleaner in this last clean rag here that I've got. And then also for this woodruff key, the guy in the Rocky Mountain ATV video put a little punch mark in it with that punch that I used earlier. And that was just to make sure that that went in a little more solidly. When I took it out, it was very loose. The punch mark should make it go in a little more tightly. Yeah, I'm getting tired. This is taking a while. Next step, we've got our rotor on. Next step is to torque down this rotor bolt. Now we will be doing this in 3 stages according to the Rocky Mountain video. First we'll be torquing it down to 14 foot-pounds, and then we will be taking it back out and seeing if there is any oil on the threads, and if there is, we'll be wiping it off and doing that until we do not see any oil on the threads. Then we will be torquing it down to something, I'll get back to you on the exact value, but it's something like 75 foot-pounds. And then we will see if, I think the starter gear and the rotor turn freely. It could just be the starter gear. We'll be making sure that these turn freely, I think. And if they don't, then we will be taking the rotor back off and seeing what the problem is. Then, if everything turns freely, we will finally be torquing the rotor bolt down to 144 foot-pounds. And we'll be doing that with the same sort of pry bar rotor holder setup that we were using when we were taking this off. Okay, let's do it. I'll let you know what those exact torque values are in a second here. Just finished torquing it down. The first torque value was 15 foot-pounds, and then the second torque value was 85 foot-pounds, and that's to make sure that the starter gear turns and the rotor turns. I was able to turn it with the rotor holder, so that's not a big deal. Then the last value was 144 foot-pounds. And so we're almost done here. Last things to do is put in those 2 gears leading to the starter again, get this gasket on, and then I think it's just getting this stator cover back on. I may be missing a step or 2, but I'll reference the video and make sure I tell you what I'm doing. I've got gasket sealer around this little stator wire cover thing. I've put in the 2 gears. I made sure to grease. There are needle bearings within this one. I made sure to grease those with a little grease. Make sure that there is a washer behind this gear and in front of it. This is a washer right here. I don't think this one has any washers, although I could be wrong about that. One of these washers may actually go on this one. Don't take my advice. I've got my new gasket on, got my dowels in. Last steps are to replace the cover. It will be magnetized on, so make sure the dowels line up when you stick it on. And then I will be torquing down all of its bolts to 78 inch-pounds. My phone is about to die, so this may be the last shot that I shoot before I head inside, but I got stator cover back on, all these bolts tightened down to 78 inch-pounds in a crisscross pattern, and I also tightened down this Doohickey tightener to 78 inch-pounds. This little rubber piece will go back on over it. Then I'll get my shifter back on, lined up with that little mark. Then I'll get the sprocket cover back on. Then I'll get this off the jack, and we'll put the skid plate back on. All of those require 10 millimeter bolts. And then last but not least, do not forget, fill up the bike with oil. So after I get all that stuff bolted back on, I'm gonna use my funnel, get the oil back inside, make sure that the oil's at a good level. If not, then I will fill up with a little bit of this new oil, and then I'm gonna start it, see how it runs. And that will be the moment of truth of whether I've killed my bike or not. I don't think I have, but you gotta make sure. All right, hopefully my phone doesn't die. I forgot to mention, you want to plug in your neutral indicator light connector here, and you also want to slot these stator wires back into the slot right there before you get the cover on. Okay, people, moment of truth here. We got all our oil in. It's about halfway up the sight glass. What time is it? It's about 5:15. I've been out here 6 hours. Coming from down there. I don't know if that's normal exactly. It does sound pretty normal. Vibration coming from down there. That doesn't totally seem normal, but again, like I haven't really ever known what was going on down there, so I don't know. I haven't known to like look for certain vibrations. I'm gonna let this warm up a little bit. Okay, so that's me all cleaned up. There was that weird sound. I will be totally honest, there was a slightly weird sound. The thing is, I don't know if it was there before or not. I didn't know to pay attention for it. So I'm gonna give this a little ride. I'm gonna go get some dinner. I've been out here all day. It's almost 5:30 now. I came out here at 11. So I'm gonna go get some dinner and come back and we'll see how the bike rides. Good old girl. Almost as old as I am. 23, I think, 23 years old. It's an 01, 24 years old. Good job. If you watched, thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe. Please leave a comment if you want to. I stream every day on this channel. I stream myself practicing motorcycle simulators. I try not to crash at all, and if I do, I have to donate. It's a little gimmick. I also sometimes stream Star Citizen, and I'd like to start streaming Kingdom Come Deliverance soon. That game looks really intriguing to me. But thank you for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Okay, I just got back from picking up some food. I got a little bit of pad thai. That bike just ran better than it's ever run in the year that I've owned it. That thing was going smooth. Oh, I did the job right. What do you know? What do you know? That's awesome. I did the job right. Okay, well, next up on the list is an LED conversion. I'm going to be changing all the lights on the bike into LEDs. That'll be sometime in the next few days. Until then, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.